Championship Tournament Packet 11. We will commence with toss-up 1 for both teams. This borough is home to the main American factory of piano maker Steinway & Sons. This borough's Rockaway Peninsula is one terminus of the A train. A unisphere built for the 1964 World's Fair is in this borough's Flushing Meadows Corona Park, which is also the location of Citi Field, the home of the Mets. Both
Queens.
10. Here is your bonus. The surfaces of superconductors can host zero-energy bound states made up of these particles for 10 each. Name this class of fermions proposed by an Italian physicist in 1937 that are their own antiparticles.
Neutrinos, I think.
Is it?
I don't know. Maybe.
Neutrino?
Majorana. If the neutrino is a Majorana fermion, it would allow for the neutrinoless double form of this nuclear process, the opposite of electron capture.
Electron emission?
Emission?
Yeah.
Electron emission?
Beta decay.
Okay.
Beta decay changes a neutron to a proton, leading to an increase in this quantity symbolized capital Z that counts the number of protons in a nucleus.
Atomic number, yeah.
Yeah, atomic number.
10 points on the bonus. Toss up 2 both sides. The sight of some of these specific objects was falsely reported to Tristan, causing him to die of grief because he thought Isolde refused to help him. A king of Athens leapt into the sea after seeing some of these objects that a hero.
A flag?
-5.
Sails?
More.
Sails of a ship? Black sails?
10 points, yes. Here is your bonus. For 10 points each, answer the following about Peggy McIntosh. McIntosh was one of the earliest thinkers to propose the existence of this type of privilege benefiting those of a certain skin color.
White privilege? White privilege?
An oft anthologized 1989 Macintosh article compares white privilege to an invisible one of these objects containing numerous special provisions.
Glass ceiling? Glass ceiling?
Knapsack. This framework, often applied to Macintosh's work, takes white privilege and combines it with other types of privilege to analyze how things like class, race, and gender form an interlocking matrix of oppression.
Intersectionality? Intersectionality?
Intersectionality?
20 points on the bonus. Toss up number 3 both sides. After realizing that she doesn't have this stuff, a character is left to face the horrors of Malpay unaided. This stuff is mixed with strawberry ice cream and passed around in a loving cup during the Solidarity Circle. The phrase, a gram is better than a dam, refers to this substance, which is consumed by citizens of the world states such as Lanina Crown.
Is that me? Soma?
10. Here is your bonus. This man claimed he sought out banned works of Shakespeare during the Cultural Revolution for 10 each. Named as current president of China, who briefly banned the use of the letter N in response to pushback against the abolition of term limits.
Xi Jinping?
Chinese internet authorities also banned depictions of this fictional character.
Winnie the Pooh?
In late 2018, Google drew backlash over plans to create a censored search engine for China known by this name.
Name of the search engine. Great Firewall.
Dragonfly, 20 on the bonus. Toss up 4 both sides. When performing this task, complementary slackness is one of the KKT conditions required for the duality gap to be 0. The gradient of f is set equal to lambda times the gradient of g in the Lagrange multiplier method for this task. Unconstrained forms of this task involve setting a function's derivative to 0 to find its global extrema. For 10 points, name is task of maximizing or minimizing a function.
Optimization.
10, here is your bonus. In the 1930s, Japanese occupiers built this river's Supong Dam, which at the time was the largest dam in Asia, for 10 each. Name this river that separates the foreign cities of Dandong and Sinuiju.
Dandong and Sindu. Mekong?
Yalu. The Yalu River forms the majority of the border between these two allied countries.
China and North Korea.
Dandong and Sinju are linked by a friendship, one of these structures across the Yalu River, which permits vehicle and rail travel, but not pedestrians.
Bridge?
20 on the bonus. Toss up 5 both sides. In 1971, a candidate for this office walked nearly 1,200 miles while campaigning. In 1972, Dan Walker won this office, a previous holder of which chaired a 1967 commission investigating race riots. In 2009, a holder of this office was impeached for planning to sell the Senate seat vacated by Barack Obama.
State governor
More.
of Illinois.
10. Here is your bonus. The protein PINK1 phosphorylates an E3 ubiquitin ligase named for this disease, for 10 each. Name this neurodegenerative disease caused by the destruction of dopamine-producing neurons in the substantia nigra.
Parkinson's.
The protein Parkin triggers destruction of mitochondria via this process, in which proteins and organelles are engulfed in a lipid bilayer, which then fuses with a lysosome.
Apoptosis.
Autophagy. PINK1 is a serine threonine example of these enzymes, which add phosphate groups to other proteins.
Ionizer.
Kines, 10 on the bonus. Toss-up number 6, both sides. In Orthodox churches, a saint with this name is the gift-giving equivalent of Saint Nicholas. A Byzantine ruler with this name blinded 99 out of every 100 captives during a 1014 campaign. A holy fool who went naked, wrapped only in chains, is known by this English name. Also the name of an emperor known as the Bulgar Slayer. For 10 points, what name?
Basil.
10, here is your bonus. The Treaty of Guadalupe Hidalgo ended the 1846-48 war between the U.S. and this country. For 10 each.
Mexico.
Name this country that agreed to set part of its northern border along the course of the Rio Grande.
Mexico.
James Polk sent this statesman to Mexico in a failed attempt to purchase lands north of the Rio Grande. In the Civil War, this man and James Mason were captured by Union forces during the Trent Affair.
Dixon.
Slidell. In 1854, the U.S. acquired land south of the Gila River from Mexico via a purchase named for this diplomat.
Gadsden.
I'm sorry, it's Gadsden. So you have earned 10 points on the bonus. Toss-up
That's
number...
what I said.
Protested.
You're protesting that?
Yeah, I said Gadsden.
Okay, we will note it and we will come back. We'll continue on. So for the time being, you've earned 10 points on the bonus. We move on to toss-up 7 for both sides. This metal is found at the active site of an enzyme that generates 2 ammonia molecules by splitting urea. By using sodium hydroxide to remove aluminum from an alloy of aluminum and this metal, one can make a porous hydrogenation catalyst named for Murray-Rainey. Iron, cobalt, and this element are ferro...
Nickel.
10, here is your bonus. A man states, I cheer a dead man's sweetheart, never ask me whose in this collection's poem is my team plowing. For 10 each. What poetry collection first published in 1896 also contained On Wenlock Edge and The Lent Lily?
Leaves of Grass.
A Shropshire Lad. This poet included When I Was 1 and 20 in its collection A Shropshire Lad.
No answer.
Williams.
Houseman. A former runner is the addressee of this Houseman poem, which notes that though the laurel grows, it withers quicker than the rose.
Defer.
To an athlete dying young.
10 points on the bonus. Toss up 8 both sides. This character who once offered China painting lessons to children is the great aunt of the insane old lady Wyatt. This character, who is described as a sort of hereditary obligation, is exempted from paying taxes by Colonel Sartoris. After this character's death, townspeople find her iron gray hair on a pillow next to the corpse of Homer Barron. For 10 points, the name is title character of a William Faulkner story.
Emily.
10, here is your bonus. Louis Vostell coined this movement's name by referring to an Albert Marc bust as Donatello among the wild beasts. For 10 each. Name is French artistic movement led by Henri Matisse.
Fauvism.
Vostell's insult was likely inspired by this artist's jungle scene. The hungry lion throws itself on the antelope. This man also painted the sleeping gypsy.
I don't know.
I forgot. Velasquez.
Rousseau.
Rousseau.
Matisse created his painting Lux Can et Volupté while spending time with this artist of a portrait of Félix Fénien. With Georges Seurat, this man developed pointillism.
Signac.
20 on the bonus. Toss-up number 9 for both sides. This singer says, I know that dress is karma, perfume, regret, and asserts, you don't want my heart, maybe you just hate the thought of me with someone new, on the lead single from his album Voice Notes. He laments, it's been a long day without you, my friend. Wiz Khalifa. -5. My friend, in the course of a song about Paul Walker, a collaboration with Wiz Khalifa. For 10 points, name is
Charlie Puth.
10, here's your bonus. For 10 each, answer the following about air pollution. Pollution by sulfur dioxide and nitrogen oxides can cause this weather phenomenon characterized by an unusually low pH.
Acid rain.
This type of colloid in which a solid is dispersed in a gas is formed by particulate matter pollutants which interfere with the climate by scattering sunlight and seeding clouds.
Suspension.
Aerosol. Exhaust from industrial plants is often passed through these devices, which have wet and dry types to remove air pollutants.
Sponge. I don't know. Filter.
Filter.
Scrubber. 10 on the bonus. Toss up 10 both sides. This composer never finished an opera based on The Devil in the Belfry by Edgar Allan Poe. Jimbo's Lullaby is part of a suite this composer dedicated to his daughter Chow Chow, whose last movement references a racist doll. A Paul Verlaine poem inspired a slow movement in this composer's suite Bergamesque.
Debussy.
10, here's your bonus. For 10 each, answer the following about the Easter Rising of 1916. The Easter Rising took place in this city where a provisional government was proclaimed from a makeshift headquarters inside its post office.
Dublin.
The rising resulted in electoral gains for this political party whose name is Gaelic for We Ourselves. Today it is one of the primary left-leaning parties in Ireland.
Defer.
Sinn Féin.
This man was president of the provincial government established during the Easter Rising. He was executed along with his brother Willie in the wake of the rebellion.
I'm blanking. I don't know.
Do you know?
I don't know.
No answer.
Purse, 20 on the bonus, 11 both sides.
Sorry.
This activist worked with Northampton Association member Olive Gilbert to publish a memoir. This activist stated, I have plowed and planted and gathered into barns in a speech that asked, where did your Christ come from? That speech by this woman notes that nobody ever helped me into
Sojourner Truth.
10 points. Here is your bonus. This movement produced a short-lived magazine named Fire, which ended after one issue when its headquarters burned down for 10 each. Named this 1920s literary movement whose leaders included Langston Hughes.
Oh, Harlem Renaissance.
The only issue of Fire included this woman's play, Color Struck. Her relationship with the much younger Percy Punter inspired her character of Virgil Tea Cake Woods.
Tea cake is
More,
is it
no,
more-
Hurston.
Fire also included From the Dark Tower, a poem by this author of A Brown Girl Dead and Yet I Do Marvel.
I forget, but I'm going to say Brooks.
Cullen, you have earned 20 on the bonus. Toss-up number 12 for both sides. This writer compared passion to a journey from Bologna to Rome in his treatise on love. This author created an Italian nobleman who foolishly sets out to join Napoleon's army in his novel about Fabrizio del Dongo. This man wrote a novel that ends as Matilde La Mole kisses the severed head of her lover Julian Sorel. For 10 points, name this author of the Charterhouse of Parma and The Red and the Black.
Oh,
Time.
Stendhal.
10 and no penalty, your bonus. Vlad the Impaler was a monarch not of Transylvania but of this region for 10 each. Name this Eastern European region, a former principality that was historically composed of the subregions Oltenia and Muntenia.
You say Wallachia?
Wallachia or Wallachia?
Wallachia?
Along with Transylvania, Wallachia is today part of this country that contains most of the Danube
Yeah.
Delta.
Romania?
The political predecessor to modern Romania was the 1859 Union of Wallachia and this other principality. It should not be confused with a nearby country whose capital is Chisinau.
Moldova.
Moldova?
Moldavi.
Moldava?
Moldavia. So
I'm sorry.
20 on the bonus. Toss up 13 both sides. This man disowned his son's adopted daughter, Nicole, because she appeared in the documentary The 1%. He released his tax returns in 2016 after Donald Trump accused him of taking a massive deduction. Bill Gates joined this man in founding the Giving Pledge, which urges wealthy people.
Warren Buffett.
10. Here is your bonus. Pencil and paper ready for 10 points each. Answer these questions about the number x, which equals the base 2 logarithm of 3. All or nothing. The base 2 logarithm of 3 lies between what two consecutive integers?
0 and 1.
1 and 2, right?
No, 0 and 1. 0 and 1.
1 and 2. If the expression 3x is rewritten as the base 2 logarithm of z, what is the value of z?
X cubed 27, right?
Answer, please.
Defer.
27 base 2? It was going to be just 27.
Is it just 27?
That's okay.
Answer I have is 27, so no. Last part of your bonus. Expressed in terms of x, what is the value of the base 3 logarithm of 2? You have 10 seconds.
One by x.
Defer.
1 by x.
Say again?
1 over x, or 1 by x.
Yeah, 10 points. Yes, so 10 points on the bonus. Here is toss-up number 14 for both sides. Before humans introduced ungulates into this range, these apex predators fed mostly on the dwarf stegodon. These animals likely use their sharp teeth and anticoagulant venom to prey on Homo floresiensis. These
Komodo dragons.
15. Here is your bonus for 10 each. Answer the following about the photojournalist Kevin Carter. Carter won a 1994 Pulitzer for his photograph of a vulture standing near a starving baby girl in this African country whose southern half broke away from it in 2011.
Sudan.
Carter was a member of the Bang Bang Club, a group of photojournalists who operated in this country where the ANC political party is active.
South Africa.
Carter became a journalist after he witnessed the Church Street bombing, which was committed by this militant faction of the African National Congress.
Oh my god. What's the name of it? I don't know. It's the one about the hand. I don't. Black
No.
hand.
Answer, please.
Black
Defer.
hand. Black hand.
Spear of the Nation, 20 on the bonus. Toss up 15 both sides. This text insists that The Flash and The Echo, two newspapers, were manipulated by the offices of the war. 3 handwriting analyses were deemed untrue and fraudulent by this text, which warns that a great blow to all truth, all justice had been carried out by acquitting Ferdinand Esterhazy. In 1898, the newspaper L'Aurore published for 10 points what?
Jacques
10. Here is your bonus. During this period, a woman known as the mother of Mi Chitsuna wrote a work alternately titled The Gossamer Years or The Mayfly Diary for 10 each. Name this period of Japanese history during which Shonagon wrote the Pillow Book.
Heian?
Defer.
Heian?
This Heian period author wrote about Japanese court life in her novel The Tale of Genji.
Oh, I forget. Touban. I don't know. Touban?
Answer, please.
Defer.
Toubata.
Murasaki. In the Tale of Genji, this woman is Genji's first wife. She is possessed by an evil spirit after the birth of their first son.
No one knows, right? No
No,
answer.
As OE, you have earned 10 on the bonus. Toss-up number 16, both sides. At a friend's funeral, this novel's protagonist imagines the marriage of two shadows and hears her heart beating, I am, I am, I am. After this novel's protagonist is found hiding in a basement,
Ulysses.
-5. In a basement crawl space, she is transferred to the care of Dr. Nolan, where she befriends Joan and receives electroshock therapy. Esther Greenwood struggles with depression in for 10 points. What autobiographical novel by Sylvia Plath?
The bell jar.
10, here's your bonus. This character baptizes Nab Alungi, a woman whose name he repeatedly pronounces incorrectly for 10 each. Nina's awkward character from a 2011 musical whose overactive imagination leads to a confrontation with Darth Vader in the song Making Things Up Again.
I have no idea.
What the heck just happened?
I don't know. Evan Hansen.
Cunningham. Elder Cunningham is paired with Elder Price on a mission to Uganda in this musical that includes the song Tomorrow is a Latter Day.
The Book of Mormon.
The Book of Mormon was co-written by Robert Lopez, who previously co-wrote this musical that parodies Sesame Street using foul-mouthed puppets.
Avenue Q.
Yeah.
20 on the bonus. Toss-up number 17, both sides. The major source term in this system's heat budget is the 48% of total insulation that it absorbs after reflecting about 4%. Because this system is the Earth's main carbon sink, increased CO2 emissions have contributed to its gradual acidification.
Amazon rainforest?
What?
The Amazon rainforest?
-5? The
Ocean.
10, here's your bonus. Tosylates are better examples of this type of functional group than alcohols for 10 each. Give this term for a functional group which becomes detached from a larger molecule during the course of a substitution reaction.
Oh,
Detached from a larger molecule.
R group?
Yes.
R group?
Leaving group. A leaving group is especially good if its conjugate acid has a low value for this quantity, which equals
pH?
negative the log of the equilibrium constant for dissociation.
pH.
pKa. Thus, good leaving groups are this kind of base, which has a low affinity for hydrogen ions.
Frost of Lowry. I don't know.
Defer.
Answer, please.
Arrhenius.
Weak. No points on the bonus. Toss up 18 both sides. A separatist movement in this country's region of Casamance agreed to a 2014 ceasefire. A UNESCO World Heritage Site in this country commemorates a house of slaves with a door of no return on Gorée Island, east of its Cap Vert Peninsula. This country's namesake river meets the Atlantic at its port of Saint Louis and forms its border with Mauritania. For
Mali.
-5, for 10 points, name this West African country surrounding the Gambia.
Senegal.
10, here is your bonus. This man's career was hampered by his common law marriage to the black slave Julia Chin for 10 each. Name this man who served as vice president under Martin Van Buren after becoming the only man elected to that office by the Senate.
Man, I forgot to. Yeah, I've got nothing, sorry.
Johnson. Johnson's 1836 campaign largely consisted of sending crowds through cities chanting, Rumsey, Dumpsey, Rumsey, Dumpsey. Colonel Johnson killed this Shawnee chief at the Battle of the Thames.
Shawnee Chief,
Tecumseh?
Tecumseh?
Johnson succeeded John Crittenden, a senator from this state, the birthplace of Abraham Lincoln.
Illinois, right?
Yeah.
Illinois.
Kentucky, 10 points on the bonus. Toss-up number 19, both sides.
I'm out.
Oh, you're calling a timeout. Okay.
You got to get a score check just to make sure I'm sorry.
I knew that one.
Point.
Score check.
The score is?
I have Norman North 35, Nease 195.
235, 195. Is everyone in agreement?
Does the clock say 147?
The clock reads 1 minute and 41 seconds left in this half.
141.
Are we in it?
So maybe 3
We
questions.
did.
So Nice called timeout. They are out of timeouts. Norman North A still has a timeout they can use.
We still got.
Everyone is in agreement on the score? Yeah.
Just needs to be-
Are there any substitutions? Okay. So we will resume the second half with toss-up number 19 for both sides. A text about this group begins, Darius and Parasatis had 2 sons. This group slaughtered its animals to make a bridge of carcasses across the river Zab during a period following the Battle of Cunaxa, in which Cyrus the Younger was killed. Upon reaching Trebizond, this group shouted, the sea, the sea. For 10 points, what mercenary army whose march up...
Celtic.
-5, whose march up country is chronicled in Xenophon's Anabasis, had a numerical name?
The 300.
10,000. -5, 0, 20, both sides. Ellipsometry can measure the complex form of this quantity, whose imaginary part accounts for attenuation, while the real part equals the square root of the relative permittivity times the relative permeability. This quantity's dependence on frequency is called dispersion, the ratio of light speed in a vacuum to its speed in a given medium.
Index of refraction.
10, here is your bonus. For 10 each, answer the following about streaming services. In March 2019, a server leak exposed viewing habits for this Olivia Humphrey-founded site, which allows library card holders to watch movies for free.
No answer.
Canopy. In 2019, this company led by Tim Cook announced its TV Plus streaming.
Apple.
In 2017, Netflix sparked a dispute with this organization that awards the Palme d'Or by foregoing a theatrical release for 2 films submitted to its competition.
Oh, Academy. The Academy. The Academy.
Ken, 10 on the bonus. Toss
Time
it.
out. Time check real quick. Just
Does
so
that
I
say
can make sure.
17?
So both teams have used their timeouts. There are 17 seconds
guys,
left
we're
on
down
the clock.
25.
Yeah.
We have a score of what?
Norman 235, Nease 10.
Don't get
235 for Norman North A and 210 for Nease.
You don't need power. We just need to get the question. Calm down.
Just don't.
Okay.
Okay. Norman North A, are you ready?
Yep.
Good buzz.
Nease, are you ready?
Yeah.
Okay, there are 17 seconds left on the clock. We will resume the second half with toss-up number 21 for both sides. Ronald Melzack and Patrick Wall found that the central nervous system can suppress this sensation in the gate control theory of it. Many philosophers ask if it...
Pain.
15, here is your bonus. A 12th century archbishop named Absalom commissioned a work describing the deeds of this country's inhabitants for 10 each. Name this country whose peoples are the subject of a mythological history written by Saxo Grammaticus.
So, Romans? Saxo Grammaticus?
Germany?
Germany.
Denmark. Saxo Grammaticus's Deeds of the Danes describes a prince whose father was murdered. That story provided the model for this Shakespearean Prince of Denmark.
Hamlet.
Hamlet.
The mythical warrior Ogira, the Dane, appears in the Chanson de Geste, named for this character, who dies when his temples burst from blowing his horn too hard.
Oh, it's the Norse guy, the guy who Heimdall.
Roland or Orlando, so 10 on the bonus. We have a final score of?
No, it's tied. It's tied.
I have a tie.
Okay,
Yeah.
let's double
Such
check the
power.
score sheet
I had
before
it.
we read any tiebreak questions.
If I had been a monkey. The one that had to be telling me. You hadn't nicked
think they do
Amazon.
tiebreakers. Sorry about this.
We tiebreak questions.
Yeah, best of 3.
Oh, okay, so it's not done.
Yeah, it's
No,
best
it's
of 3
not.
toss-ups.
No, it's not.
It's definitely
Or it
not.
might be sudden.
Also, why is the
I mean,
forest decision?
Only half of the guy's done that.
Well, heck, I don't.
It's fine.
Oh my god.
I should have just gotten Senegal. I should have.
It's hard.
Oh, were you like?
You gotta just-
second
I knew
guessing?
Senegal, and I
just guess.
You gotta just stop letting him pass.
I mean, I didn't know.
We can still win. We just it's all good.
Pain.
Thank you, AP Psych.
Hobby Lobby question.
The moment you said sensation, central nervous system, I was like, it's got to be pain.
Just like really pain. Just
Only all our matches where on
Like
the
that.
website we became
Hmm. Hmm?
answer.
And then they keep on reading questions.
No, he's tied on.
Oh no.
I've never played in a tie before.
Hmm?
I don't know the rules for a tiebreaker.
I'm checking my score sheet and a name of names on that there.
Okay. Is there anyone else keeping score?
I am, yes. I have a tie at 235.
You want to come and check the score sheet?
Yeah, we can.
Oh no.
And so
You're keeping track of the score. Come and check the score sheet as well.
Oh, jeez.
when I do a cross check, I'm coming out with a 10-point difference, but I think it's my math.
Twists and turns.
Can we get a refresher on the tiebreaker rules? Oh my
God.
Yes.
Well, the protest actually
Are
mattered
you
for
here
once.
for the next round?
I'm actually sorry about those 2 nags.
Yeah, I kind of ruined it. But, you know, no big deal.
God.
Oh, Sean,
Mike fell.
You're knocking over all the stuff.
What?
Rolling.
Gosh.
Never go full monkey.
The log questions in Monkey don't.
Yeah, that was gross.
Oh, that was so sad. Because you guys knew the answers.
Yeah.
Someone had inquired about the tiebreak procedures. If we are in agreement that it is tied, we read 3 toss-ups off the clock, no bonuses.
That's good for us.
If the score is still tied after 3 toss-ups off the clock, we will read toss-ups in a sudden death format. So after that, at that point, once the score changes,
If no
then
one
the game will
answers.
be over at that point.
So we get bonuses?
Or like
No bonuses for any tiebreak or sudden death opportunities. Do we have an agreement on the score?
Yes.
What is the current score? 235 for both teams. So now we will read 3 toss-ups off the clock.
Please
Are there any
answer.
substitutions?
Where do these questions come from?
These are questions that are written by NAQT and its writers. NAQT's writers produce these questions, and then NAQT editors look over them before
I was just
final
asking.
submission.
I was just asking if there's like tie-breaking packets.
In the event that there's a tie after, say, 23 toss-ups, then we would get more questions from the control room. Are there any comments or questions before we begin?
Wait, if
It's first score after 3 toss-ups without timer, without bonus, and then after that it's sudden elimination.
Yes.
Yeah.
So we will see what the score is after these 3 toss-ups. Off the clock. This is the next toss-up for both teams. After this man arrived in Seville following a trip he took with Alonso de Ojeda, he wrote a letter to his patron Lorenzo de' Medici. This explorer originally gave such names as Gulf of the Ganges to some places on his first trip across the Atlantic. His comparison of stilt houses to the buildings of Venice led him to name a region Venezuela.
Oh no. Oh, Vespucci.
10 points. Next toss-up for both sides.
Sorry, man, sorry.
In March 2019, Marco Rubio introduced a bill to let people take this action by borrowing from Social Security earnings. Ivanka Trump advocates mandating that companies allow this action, as would be required under Rosa DeLauro and Kirsten Gillibrand's Family Act. The U.S. is the only OECD country to not mandate that companies allow new mothers to take for 10.
maternity leave.
I need more.
Like paid maternity leave.
10 points. So we are tied, so this will be probably this will probably break the tie.
Death question.
We will see. Next toss-up for both sides. This man ordered his head shepherd Doeg to kill over 80 priests. He foolishly ordered his people to fast during a battle, which led him to almost kill his own son for eating honey. That son's friend, a court harpist, later became this ruler's successor. Because of his failure to obey God, this father of
Saul?
10 points.